Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch, for those of you following along. I am on we're on book 1, page 41. So that's where we left off last time. And for those of you who don't know what the book is about, it's basically a guy named Neale Donald Walsch who got tired of waiting for everything to get better in life, or what just got tired, and began having these crazy nights where they were just staying up. He was staying up and he was asking God questions. And it got to the point where he started actually hearing the answer. So he would write out the question and he would write out the answer. And it became a dialogue between him and God. And so he shares all of that in the book's Conversation with God. And there's actually 3. There's actually now 4, but there were 3 to start. And so the book that I have is all of the books together, but we're on book 1 right now. So for those of you following along or tuning in, feel free to pose a question about the material itself. We're only doing study group stuff if you're tuning in for a reading, or if you are trying to get a personal question answered. I'm not doing those. We're only doing the study group stuff. So that's what we're doing. Okay. So I'm going to read it, and I may stop when I feel like I need to stop and kind of expand on something. I love this book. It's one of my favorite books to read. Period. So. All right. So. Okay. Where are you at? Okay. I repeat the question. Where else would... I don't know where you left off, because I want to pick up right where... Here. I'm going to start a little bit before, because I want to kind of pick up where we left off properly. Okay, so are you saying that I shouldn't feel bad about the starving children of Africa, the violence and injustice in America, the earthquake that kills hundreds in Brazil? God's response. And every time I switch between Neale and God, I'm going to just say it first before I say what they're responding with. So Neale, are you saying that I shouldn't feel bad about the starving children of Africa, the violence and injustice in America, the earthquake that kills hundreds in Brazil? God, there are no shoulds or shouldn'ts in God's world. Do what you want to do. Do what reflects you, what represents you as a grander version of yourself. If you want to feel bad, but judge not, and neither condemn, for you know not why a thing occurs, nor to what end. And remember you this, that which you condemn will condemn you, and that which you judge you will one day become. Rather, seek to change those things, or support others who are changing whose things which no longer reflect your highest sense of who you are. Yet bless all, for all is the creation of God, through life living, and that is the highest creation. Neale, could we just stop here for a moment and let me catch my breath? Did I hear you say that there are no shoulds or should nots in God's world? God, that is correct. Neale, how can this be? If there are none in your world, where would they be? God, indeed, where? Neale, I repeat the question. Where else would shoulds and should nots appear if not in your world? God, in your imagination. Neale, but those who have taught me all about the rights and wrongs, the do's and don'ts, the shoulds and shouldn't, told me all those rules were laid down by you, by God. God, then those who taught you were wrong. I have never set down a right or a wrong, a do or a don't. To do so would be to strip you completely of your greatest gift, the opportunity to do as you please and experience the results of that, the chance to create yourself anew in the image and likeness of who you really are. The space to produce a reality of a higher and higher you based on your grandest idea of what it is of which you are capable. To say that something, a thought, a word, an action is wrong would be as much as to tell you not to do it. To tell you not to do it would be to prohibit you. To prohibit you would be to restrict you. To restrict you would be to deny the reality of who you really are, as well as the opportunity for you to create and experience that truth. There are those who say that I have given you free will, yet these same people claim that if you do not obey me, I will send you to hell. What kind of free will is that? Does this not make a mockery of God, to say nothing of any sort of true relationship between us? Neil: well, now you're getting into another area I wanted to discuss, and that's this whole business about heaven and hell. From what I'm gathering here, there is no such thing as hell. God: there is hell, but it is not what you think, and you do not experience it for the reasons you have been given. Neil: what is hell? God: it is the experience of the worst possible outcome of your choices, decisions, and creations. It is a natural consequence of any thought which denies me or says no to who you are in relationship to me. It is the pain you suffer through wrong thinking. Yet even the term wrong thinking is a misnomer, because there is no such thing as that which is wrong. Hell is the opposite of joy. It is unfulfillment. It is knowing who and what you are and failing to experience that. It is being less. That is hell, and there is none greater for your soul. But hell does not exist as this place you have fantasized, where you burn in some everlasting fire or exist in some state of everlasting torment. What purpose could I have in that? Even if I did hold the extraordinarily ungodly thought that you did not deserve heaven, why would I have a need to seek some kind of revenge or punishment for your failing? Wouldn't it be a simple matter for me to just dispose of you? What vengeful part of me would require that I subject you to eternal suffering of a type and a level beyond description? If you answer the need for justice, would not a simple denial of communion with me in heaven serve the ends of justice? Is the unending infliction of pain also required? I tell you, there is no such experience after death as you have constructed in your fear-based theologies. Yet there is an experience of the soul so unhappy, so incomplete, so less than whole, so separated from God's greatest joy, that to your soul this would be hell. But I tell you, I do not send you there, nor do I cause this experience to be visited upon you. You yourself create the experience whenever and however you separate yourself from your own highest thought about you. You yourself create the experience whenever you deny yourself, whenever you reject who and what you really are. Yet even this experience is never eternal. It cannot be, for it is not my plan that you shall be separated from me forever and ever. Indeed, such a thing is impossibility. For to achieve such an event, not only would you have to deny who you are, I would have to as well. This I will never do. And so long as one of us holds the truth about you, the truth about you shall ultimately prevail. Neil: but if there is no hell, does that mean I can do what I want, as I wish, commit any act without fear or retribution? God: is it fear that you need in order to be, do, and have what is instinctually right? Must you be threatened in order to be good? And what is being good? What gets to have who gets to have the final say about that? Who sets the guidelines? Who makes the rules? I tell you this, you are your own rule maker. You set the guidelines and you decide how well you have done, how well you are doing, for you are the one who has decided who and what you really are, and who you want to be, and you are the only one who can assess how well you're doing. No one else will judge you ever. For why and how could God judge God's own creation and call it bad? If I wanted you to be and do everything perfectly, I would have left you in the state of total perfection whence you came. The whole point of the process was for you to discover yourself, create yourself as you truly are and as you truly wish to be. Yet you could not be that unless you also had a choice to be something else. Should I therefore punish you for making a choice that I myself have laid before you? If I did not want you to make the second choice, why would I create other than the first? This is a question you must ask yourself, because you would assign me the role of a condemning God. The direct answer to your question is yes, you may do as you wish without fear of retribution. It may serve you, however, to be aware of consequences. Consequences are results, natural outcomes. These are not all the same as retributions or punishments. Outcomes are simply that. They are what results from the natural application of natural laws. They are that which occurs, quite predictably, as a consequence of what has occurred. All physical life functions in accordance with natural laws. Once you remember these laws and apply them, you have mastered life at the physical level. What seems like punishment to you, or what you would call evil or bad luck, is nothing more than a natural law asserting itself. Neil, then if I were to know these laws and obey them, I would never have a moment's trouble again. Is that what you're telling me? God, you would never experience yourself as being in what you call trouble. You would not understand any life situation to be a problem. You would not encounter any circumstance with trepidation. You would put an end to all worry, doubt, and fear. You would live as you fantasize Adam and Eve lived, not as disembodied spirits in the realm of the absolute, but as embodied spirits in the realm of the relative. Yet you would have all the freedom, all the joy, all the peace, and all the wisdom, understanding, and power of the spirit you are. You would be a fully realized being. This is the goal of your soul. This is its purpose, to fully realize itself while in the body, to become the embodiment of all that really is. This is my plan for you. This is my ideal, that I should become realized through you. That thus concept is turned into experience, that I might know myself experientially. The laws of the universe are laws that I laid down. They are perfect laws, creating perfect function of the physical. Have you ever seen anything more perfect than a snowflake? Its intricacy, thank you. I'm like, what am I saying here? Its intricacy, its design, its symmetry, its conformity to itself, and originality from all else. All are a mystery. You wonder at the miracle of this awesome display of nature. Yet I can do this with a single snowflake. What think you I can do, have done with the universe? Were you to see the symmetry of it, the perfection of its design, from the largest body to the smallest particle, you would not be able to hold the truth of it in your reality. Even now, as you get glimpses of it, you cannot yet imagine or understand its implications. Yet you can know there are implications, far more complex and far more extraordinary than your present comprehension can embrace. Your Shakespeare said it wonderfully. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. And I'm going to pause it there for a second because I want to talk about that for a moment. And hey guys, by the way, David John on Facebook, it's a troll. Y'all need to block that person and go ahead and block that person and report them as spam so they can get kicked out of the room. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. It's interesting because yesterday I was thinking about, I was walking up the driveway with my partner to go get the mail, and I was thinking about some of this because when you think of people who come from a place of faith, or they come from a place of God being the creator, that there is a creator, that's one place or perspective to come from. And then when you come from a place where there is no God, or there's nothing and there's just what we experience, that comes from a completely different perspective or mindset. And I know of people who, they're very spiritual, they're actually really great people, but they also do not believe in God, right? Which is fine. People can not believe in God. You don't have to believe in God. The reason why I have such faith in God is because I was conditioned and born into Catholicism, and because of my sexuality and because of who I authentically was, that butted up against what I was conditioned to believe from the Catholic perspective. And I had to make a decision. Was I going to accept that the people who I trusted or the faith that I believed in that's basically said that I was an evil person, I didn't deserve to exist, and I was going to exist in a damnation of hell for all existence after my death, was I going to believe that the faith I bought into, that was a accurate representation of God and of the universe? Or was I going to trust my inner being, which was telling me, you are a good person, you deserve to exist, and you are a reflection, a true reflection of God. If you were a mistake, why would you exist? There would be no such an opportunity for mistake. So I had to trust that. And I was like, okay. So it forced me to turn away from my belief system, my Catholicism, to try to establish and form a true union and connection with God. The God that I believed came from a place of love, not from a place of judgment and damnation. So, and the two don't go together. You know, there can't be a perfect being of love and then also exist this judgmental, critical being that chooses to punish or chooses to destroy or to cause pain, right? It doesn't, the two just do not connect. So I followed my inner being, I accepted my inner being, and in all of that, I began to open my heart and my awareness to the reality or the truth of God. And in that, I began to receive answers to all of the questions that I began to have. And so it allowed me to more and more and more accurately, from what I believe, to understand God. And I believe that what exists in what you would see in biblical documents and forms, depending on which Bible you want to follow, because there's like so many versions that have been changed over time, it's kind of ridiculous. And if you could see the changes that have been done over time from the first version that we have to exist, it is ridiculous how much has changed. And it's all the writer, the person who decided to republish or to make another version of it. You know, they can change stuff because that's the person writing the version of it. But forgot my train of thought here. When we are coming from a place of love, and this is actually what I was thinking about, I believe that there's a pattern to the universe. I believe that there's a pattern to the universe, there's a pattern to us. Everything has a pattern. There's a structure to all things. And all of it is intentional. There's an intended pattern. There's intention. If you are coming from a place where there is no God and there's nothing driving the consciousness of creation, then that's coming from a place of chaos. Everything's created in chaos. So everything is chaotically created. But the problem for me in that is that why would a perfectly shaped snowflake and a pattern repeatedly over and over and over exist without there being some intention of this pattern? And so these patterns and these coincidences or synchronicities that we see across the board in all of creation, I believe are actual representations and reminders from God that we are all here. We are all one. We are all source, and that we are source in human form, that there is God. For me, I see it as a pattern of obvious intent. People coming from a place of there is no God, they're coming from a place that there is a chaotic universe and everything is chaotically created. And I don't buy into that. I believe that there's an intention and that everything really does happen for a reason in my belief. So that's where I come from. And so there's a big difference between the two. So because of this, reading the material and conversations with God and God responding to Neil, stating that there really is no right or wrong. There's only choices and consequences, and there's natural laws that govern everything. And you can be and do and choose whatever you desire, whatever you wish, but there are consequences to some of those, to all of those choices, all of those decisions. Everything has a consequence. If you come from a place of love, then you will experience less suffering. There will be less suffering for you if you experience or choose to operate from a place of love or from a place of awareness and understanding with the greater being. All of us being the greater being. If you operate from a place of fear or a place of lack or a place of chaos, then your actions will reflect that. And not only that, you will experience more of that in your life as well. Now, we all come here to be this full expression, this full realized form, right? Well, we all are here to be our unique selves. I'm here to be Ferny because I chose from a soul perspective, from a God perspective, that this is who I needed to be in this moment, in this time. So I'm Ferny because it was, we chose it. We all chose it. You are who you are because you chose it from the highest to the now, to the you. So you are already fulfilling your grandest purpose, which is to be you wholeheartedly, fully. Now, people have this mindset or perspective that everything in life should be good or perfect or happy, and that if something doesn't operate in that way, or something is painful, or there's suffering, or if there's, the lack experience, then something has gone wrong, or, God chose to punish whoever, or this or that. Not the case, never the case, never the case. That's not how it works, because we are ultimately all responsible for the choices that we make, and not just individually, collectively. If 1,000 birds are flying in the air and 1,000 birds at one moment choose to react and all fly right, then that in itself is going to create a disturbance in the air right around them, because they've all made that choice, and that disturbance will have an effect somehow on something. So it's the same way. All of us as individuals, we are making choices and decisions every day, whether they're conscious or unconscious. We're making choices, we're doing things, we're thinking things. If we all are thinking about pain or anger or rage or whatever, it's producing more of it into the environment, more into our conscious, our awareness here. And we're all going to start to feel the effects of it. And most of us have felt the effects of it over the last year, because we've all been making ourselves crazy. At the same time, if more of us were to focus on love or peace or unity or whatever in a constructive way, in a way that we all can agree on, that will produce more of that in the world. I had a conversation with one of my neighbors a few days ago where they were talking about how we all just need to pray and meditate on peace, and we can change, we can change what's happening, or we can change this or that. And I'm like, look, if there are 500 million people focused on one thing, and you only get 1 million focusing the opposite way, there is not enough charge energetically to offset that. There has to be a majority. So there has to be a majority of thought, intention, and there has to be a majority of thought, intention, and action to kind of drive energy in a particular direction. Even with meditation and prayer, you have to have enough people meditating or praying the exact same way to be able to kind of shift the energy of something that is occurring. But if there aren't enough people doing that, it doesn't matter. There isn't. It's almost like one person putting up sandbags while there's a tsunami coming. You can't stop the tsunami with sandbags. It's not enough charge. It's not enough of a barrier to kind of offset that. So there has to be enough people focusing on the same things to be able to drive enough energy, creative energy there. Because at the end of the day, there are natural laws that we have to follow here. And we all, on a soul level, agree to use this platform, this physical reality, for the purposes of our own will. And with this, if there are people who are trying to believe in a reality that does not have enough to support it, and it's butting up or it's going against this established reality that all of us who are in physical form agree to, that can't be supported for very long. It can't be sustained, and it will actually implode on itself, which is what we're seeing now with some people who have been buying into conspiracies. So that's what tends to happen. And the hell that is experienced is personal. It's a personal hell that you go through. And so some of us who we punish ourselves, or we put ourselves through situations and experiences that we know, or that are obviously not going to be in our benefit, or it's not obviously a place of love that we're coming from, and reacting to that, it's not coming from this or that. We set ourselves up for a personal hell, and we will experience that personal hell in one way or another. That doesn't mean you're going to die and then go to a place and burn for all damnation. What purpose does that serve? That literally serves no purpose. Like, if I were a god and I created all of my children, and I have 50 children, and I'm like, okay, y'all go out and play, and you have the right to go out and play, but if I don't like it, or I don't like you, then I'm going to force you to suffer very, very badly, and I'm going to punish you, and I'm going to make you suffer for a long period of time. Like, what purpose? Then why the hell did you give them the free will to go out and play? Like, you should probably help them to, understand that there are rules. The problem is that there are no rules, that there are realities, there are natural laws. And the rules or the natural laws exist within each of us. And within each of us, energetically, there's an encoding that is there that basically tells us what is coming from a place of love and what is coming from a place of fear. And in life, when we encounter these experiences and scenarios that one could be love, one can be fear, we're going to react, we're going to identify, we're going to relate. And so if we find ourselves identifying, relating, or acknowledging and embracing the perspective or the position of love, then that will yield, a heavenly state in some way or another. If we embrace or we utilize a place of fear or lack, then that will create more of that for us, which is when we suffer. And we produced it for ourselves and we suffer it ourselves. God is not people think of God as a director or God as the person that controls everything. God isn't a controlling mechanism. God is a witnessing mechanism. God is the witness within us. As I speak to you now, I know that I am speaking to you as a God in human form. As you are hearing me now and hearing what I have to say, you should know that you are God listening to yourself, telling yourself that you're worthy, that you are of love. There's a feedback loop that's happening there. And there are enough reminders in the universe to keep us aware of that. And we don't realize it until we've either evolved enough or we've grown enough on a soul level to understand that from this point of view, from this perspective. Because on a soul level, we all get it. But from a human level, it's really hard because we get caught up in the little details. And so for myself, and I will use myself as an example, in one of my past lives, I remember participating with Custer's army, the military unit that was basically helping to wipe out the Native Americans back when Custer's army was basically taking over for the U.S. So I was part of that military brigade or unit, and I helped to contribute to the decimation of the culture. And that was a lifetime that I lived because I remember some pieces of it. What's interesting is that already is one experience that on an energy level I produced for myself. And even though I may not have always experienced, I didn't completely experience the hell of my own making in that lifetime. There are experiences that I've had in this lifetime where I've identified with the person on the opposite end, the person that has been decimated, the person that has been, hurt, etc. So I'm having to see it from a different end. And it is a hell. It is a hell that, in some way I helped to create, hundreds of years ago or whatnot. So it is something that is showing up in a different lifetime that I have to resolve within myself, because it has created a personal hell for me on a soul level to have gone through all of these experiences and to also have contributed to such heartache and such suffering. So in this form, I have to choose to create more love in this world, to create more healing in this world. The work that I do and the reason why I do it is because of my choices and decisions from prior lifetimes. And so this lifetime is me bringing myself to peace with it and when I say myself, I'm talking about all of us. I'm talking about our world and this physical platform and the culture and everything. So it's us when I say us, and me and myself as God form and human forms, all of us. So that's all mixed in. But there's enough synchronicities. There's enough things that show up that remind us that we are God in human form, and that this is all intended to exist, and that there are no accidents, there are no mistakes. Even in the most painful situations, you can learn so much, you can evolve so much, and you can gain immense amount of wisdom and compassion for people by just having an experience. So everything that you go through, know that, whatever it is that you're experiencing, there are choices behind it. There are decisions that you made that brought you to that point. And the decisions you make then will also lead to more consequences down the road. And some of it will also go into another lifetime or into another period for you to also gain from that as well, and to kind of come to a place of peace within yourself about that as well. Okay, let me go through some of the questions here, because y'all have some questions about the material, the study group stuff. See if I want to. Hey, Candy. Lozano. Wow, how handsome in your gloss. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let me see. Going through. Excellent book. It is totally. It's one of my favorites. One of my favorites. Oh, thank you, Jetali. She's like, I read it because of your recommendation. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I want so many of us to really awaken. And awakening doesn't mean I suddenly know how special I am and I'm going to ascend to the sixth dimension or the fifth. That's not being awakened. Being awakened is when you stop and you look at yourself and you're like, there's more to life than this. There's more to everything than what I'm experiencing on a superficial human level. There's more. And you start to ask yourself, what's more? What else is there? And you start to dig deeper into yourself. And you also start to examine yourself and you start to question yourself. When a person is truly awakened to the reality of their being, usually the first thing that we do when we experience anything is, what is my role in this? How am I contributing to this? Or what did I do to cause this? We question ourselves because we know that everything is connected. We know that we are all one being in various forms and in all these various pieces. So we have to look at ourselves first, because by looking outward first, you're actually reflecting away, or you're projecting your responsibility, your obligation. But when you look at yourself first, you're actually doing the same thing as looking outward, but you're acknowledging that you are a part of the entire system. And without you, the system would not be the way it is. So it always has to be something that you do when you are awakened. You have to look at yourself first and see, what did I do? How did I contribute to this? What have I done to cause this or to bring this about? And how can I shift this? How can I change this? How can I make a different choice? And then once we make the different choice, then we start to align ourselves with a different set of experiences. And we start to experience life in very different ways. Okay, let's go up here. Topic is Conversations with God. It's the book that I was reading. So I was just reading the material and then I kind of, put my 2 cents in there about that. Michelle Williams, what about having fears like being afraid of darkness? Many people may not know this, but people who have severe phobias or fears, they may actually be connected to a past life experience or another lifetime. It's funny because I don't like calling them past lives because they're actually still happening. Like everything is happening simultaneously. It's not like it's all like separated. We're only experiencing time because we're in this form, but there actually is no time. But when I say past lives, I'm actually talking about another lifetime that's connected to you. So you may have had another lifetime where you were either sealed in a vault in Egypt, or you may have actually fallen. You may have been part of a team that was mining, and there was a mine collapse and you were trapped in there, and so you were claustrophobic, or the darkness represents. So there's different reasons for why that could be. Some people might be afraid of water because they may have drowned in a past life. Some people may be afraid of sharks because they were consumed by sharks or attacked by one. So there's different reasons for why sometimes people have phobias like that. If you have a fear, should you face the fear? Fear is a very important tool. If you think of fear as a tool instead of the enemy, just like the ego is not the enemy. The ego is a tool. It is a mechanism for our unique ability to be in perspective. Without the ego, God could not reduce itself into a unique point of view, because the ego is basically a mechanism that helps to refine and condense the perspective into an I. And so without the ego, the I, all of us individually, could not exist. So the ego is a tool and a mechanism for source. People love to demonize the ego. And I get it, because if you're too consumed with the ego, if you're too caught up in ego, you actually start to identify with the lack, with the fear of things. So ego is a tool. Fear is another tool. If you have fear, then examine the fear. Try to understand, what is the fear based in? What is the reason for the fear? So, for example, last year, and I use my experience as an example. Last year, before, actually the year before that, in 2019, before COVID existed, that was when, because we moved here in 2018. Was it 2018? I think it was 2018. So in 2019, I was prepared. I don't know why, but I just felt a little uneasy about the idea that if something ever happened and there was like a disruption to grocery services, or there was a disruption to our normal like experiences or our normal procedures for living our human life, how would I deal with that? And so I just started to behave differently, even though I didn't realize it at the time. And I started to act in a way where I was kind of preparing for something. So I bought like a deep freezer, didn't know why, because I never really wanted one. All of a sudden I wanted a deep freezer. So I bought one. I was wanting a solar panel setup. And so I wanted a solar array in case we ever needed power, so the power was cut off or something happened. And I didn't know why these thoughts were in my mind. Like, if something happens, you should have a backup, or there should be a way to like work through it. And so I started to build a stockpile of food for no reason. Just started doing it because I was like, well, if we ever cut off or something happens, or maybe there's a big bad snowstorm and we can't drive to the store. I don't want to be stuck in the house for days without any help. I would rather go ahead and prepare just in case. So that was always my thinking, but it was there. It was just an ongoing nagging thing. But I just did what I was like, well, there's no harm in having a stockpile of food. There's no harm in having a deep freezer. There's no harm in going ahead and having like a solar array panel where if something happens, at least we can run the refrigerator or, the AC or the washing machine. So there was no reason for it. And it wasn't necessarily a fear, but the idea could be based in fear, because it was the idea of what if something wrong or something bad happened, would I be prepared? But I didn't allow myself to fixate on the fear. Oh my God, something, the world's going to end. That's not where I went with it. Where I went with it was, well, if something does happen, it'd be nice to have this. So that way, and so I was like, I found other reasons why it might be beneficial. And I planned, and I ended up planning for apparently the pandemic, because when everybody was running out of toilet paper, when everybody was running out of this or that or whatever, I was fine. I was perfectly okay. So I was prepared for something that I didn't even realize I had been prepared for. Not because I submitted to the fear, but because I used the fear that was there as a tool to prepare myself in case this would be a reality. So when we actually found out about COVID, when everything was going to hell in a handbasket and people were freaking out, there was also fear there, because I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what to expect. I'm still human, even though I'm psychic and I can see things. I don't know everything. I can't see everything that's going to happen to the letter. I can only sense what I can sense. And so even in that, the fear that I had, I didn't become hysterical. I didn't become overly paranoid. I did use some of the paranoia of like, I don't know how bad this is or how contagious this is. So I'm going to just kind of do what I need to do to just protect myself. But I'm not going to necessarily fixate on oh my God, everybody's like, no, I just used it. I used it in my benefit. So I was using that fear of, if this happens, if that happens. And I was like trying to promote that my family do this, or I was getting extra supplies for some family members, or this or that. I use the fear as a tool to enable me to make good decisions based out of love. So I kind of flipped fear on the script. So that's what you can do with fear. So facing fear, if you have a phobia or a fear, you don't necessarily have to face the phobia. I, to this day, because in my mid 30s, I suddenly became afraid of deep water and sharks. Just suddenly became afraid of it. Even though when I was younger, I could go swimming in the deep, had no problem. I was like a freaking Ariel the mermaid. So, but I just I've allowed myself to just accept that is what it is. Now I could do away with it, but I mean, what's the point? I don't live near the ocean. I'm not going scuba diving anytime soon. I don't really necessarily need to face the fear unless it's something I need to deal with on a regular basis. But if it is something that you need to work through, then you can pretend that there are situations in your life where you have to face it. So if you're afraid of going to the grocery store, then if you have to go to the grocery store, then practice run going to the grocery store and just practice and force yourself to just take one step extra every time you give it a shot or give it a go, because you're going to have to condition yourself to work through the fear if it's necessary. You don't necessarily have to do it, but if it's necessary, like having to go to the grocery store, then so be it. Okay. Exactly. Yeah, Red Robin was like, the thought that things happen in this life because of choices made in past lives is eye-opening. We are making choices now that may lead to the next. Wow. Yeah, exactly. Which is why I know for myself, what I endured as a child, all of the abuse, all of the things that I went through in my life, those were not, if you're in the middle of it, it's easy to just say I'm a victim and that's it. But I always try to understand the deeper reasons for it. And I wouldn't have enough compassion for people without understanding the suffering of those who are not given compassion. So if I am trying to help people who are a minority, or who are suffering from, being treated like secondhand citizens or whatever, I would not be able to relate or have compassion for those people unless I had experiences that helped me to identify and understand it. Now, had I not gone through some of the things that I went through as a child, I probably wouldn't be as open-hearted as I am today. And so I needed to go through those experiences. Would I go through it again? Hell no, not. I wouldn't choose to go through that again. But my soul understood the reasons for it, and so I went through that experience, and now I have the compassion that I have because of it. So some of the reasons, if I was part of Custer's military brigade and I was part of basically decimating the Native American culture in this part of the US, it would be befitting that I would end up moving to the place I helped to decimate, and I would be working to produce more spiritual awareness and understanding and more, bring more truth or authenticity to spirituality in the world, which is what I'm doing every time I get on here, because I'm fulfilling something that I am committed to on a soul level. That is it's all tied in. But I wouldn't even be able to do this had I not had those experiences as a child that set me up and prepared me for the level of compassion required to do this work. Okay, let's go over here real quick, and then I think I'm gonna be done. So let's go here. Jennifer's like, but Ferny, there is a difference in spirituality and religion. Yes, religion is just a system of beliefs and ideas that help to structure the understanding of God and our place in the world. That's what religion is. So religion, in my mind, is a system set up to help people make sense of their connection to God, to the idea of God, what is expected of God, and also our place in this world. That's religion. Spirituality kind of goes above that, or it takes a step above that, which is we are not just our physical bodies. We exist beyond our physical bodies, and we are states of consciousness. We are beings of consciousness, and it isn't all based on just being physical. And you can use religion to evolve into spirituality. You can also use spirituality to expand your original belief with a religion. So spirituality is kind of like an add-on. It's like a way, in other words, if I am a lifeguard and my job is to go out there, swim, and bring someone to shore if they need me. If I went to the military and was a marine swimmer, that would probably help me with the job that I have as a lifeguard. Even though with the job with the lifeguard is very structured and is set up with certain procedures, what I received in training from my time in the military would have helped me with that, in other words. So in other words, everything that I experienced on a human level and understanding things from a place of love, which is my spirituality, it has always been reflected and represented and repeatedly represented in all of the spiritual material that I find and that I read. And everything that I read is basically spinning exactly what I learned from something else in a completely different way. And if you read enough stuff, you start to see the patterns and repeating ideas, repeating thoughts, repeating teachings, because they're repetitive over time, because that is the core. Those are the authentic understandings that come from different cultures, different walks of life, etc. Religion is based on a structured idea that really kind of excludes other other things most times. So, many religions are based on just the structure that they've set up, and anything outside of that or beyond that is not really, it doesn't allow you to experience God. So most religions are very limiting, but you can use spirituality to expand your faith in religion or your experiences in religion and vice versa. So it does help you in this way. But yes, they're very different. This guy Michael Reed. Hi, can I have a card, please? What card? What are you talking about? There's like no card. I'm not a tarot reader. I don't read cards. So that's not my forte. So we're doing a study group. So you came at the wrong time, and you're under the impression that I'm doing readings. I'm not. We're doing study group, guys. Wendy's got, she's like, I have a fear of being alone. Anxiety is always on high alert, thinking it's going to happen. So I would recommend a couple of things. First of all, I would recommend you intentionally spend time alone. Make it so that you do an activity or do something where you are actually alone and find a way to enjoy it. Because if you're afraid of being alone, that can be based on a lot of different reasons. But the most common thing beneath that is that when you're alone, that's it. You've been abandoned, you've been rejected, and you've been shut out, which is probably based on some childhood experiences that you might have had. So that feeling of alone is always difficult for people, because the moment that we, as source, having experience of all love and all connection, we break ourselves and force ourselves into these perspectives using the ego, the process of the ego, so that I'm Ferny, automatically the I exists. And there is a mechanism that is switched on that is telling me I exist only as me. I exist only as me. But yet we've got God always present in all things and in everything and in all of us, because we are God. So the love and the connection is there, but the mechanism in our head telling us we only exist only as us, or we are separate, is what actually keeps us from feeling that full awareness of God. Let me tell you something. When you start embracing being alone and being fine with it, when you start having an authentic relationship with God, with Source, with creation, when you know your true place in all of it and you embrace that and you revel in it, you will not be able to be alone, because you are always with God. You're always with creation. Like, you never feel alone, and I never feel alone. I can just go for a walk, and the majesty that starts to happen, the miracles, the synchronicities that show up that reflect back to you a little smile from the universe or a little smile from God, all of these synchronicities will begin to appear, which validate and affirm that you are not alone. So you having this fear that you're alone is based in a human trauma, that at some point in your life you accepted that you are able to be rejected, you are able to be shunned or pushed out, or to be separate and not be included. So there's something that happened that kind of made that a reality for you. And so you've carried it over, and even as an adult, but it is not true. It is a lie that you fed into because of the experiences that you had. Okay. So I would recommend trying to spend some time alone. I intentionally will go and have, something to eat by myself back when I was going to a restaurant, because I've been to a restaurant since last March or last February. But I will go and I'll eat something by myself. Sometimes I'll go and I'll sit and just watch. I mean, I love having that alone time. Even to my partner, he gets on his nerves because sometimes I just want to be by myself. I just want to be in my own space, in my own mind. So I'll come to my office and I'll sit here and I'll just be with myself. I love it. I enjoy it. It's enjoyable. And it's hard for people who are used to always having someone around, but it's something that we should practice, because also if you get good at being alone and being happy still being alone, you take the pressure off of people in relationships, and you won't expect too much from the people in your life to make up for something that you should be able to cope with on your own, because the idea of being alone is a lie. All right, that's it. Wendy's like, I already have my heart racing thinking about it. I get it. I understand. It is very empowering when you can be alone and be perfectly okay. It's empowering. It is empowering. I'm not saying go and spend your entire life by yourself. I'm just saying you need to reduce that fear and give yourself a chance to experience being alone, because it is important. You're not going to spend eternity alone. If in fact you're going to, being human is the only time when we actually have the experience of feeling like we're alone, just because we are never alone in that form. We're always basically like attached to the hips of everybody. So this is the only time you're going to get a chance to be alone with your own devices. So that's what that's about. Okay. All right, guys. I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. Okay. Take